Good morning slash afternoon to those who are online already. Thank you for coming in a bit early. I can see that Trey and Harriet are connecting. These are our guests for today from the Afri-Job network.
This is Trey.
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Trey.
Nice to meet you.
Right. Welcome, Trey. Good to have you with us. Maybe what we can do in the meantime is have a couple of our students unmute and say hi and introduce themselves, and maybe say why they are on this call today. What prompted them, apart from the calendar invite and the comms that came out, what prompted you to come to this session specifically?
Hey Jerome, I'm doing good. So I saw the invite, I saw the email, like I kind of checked out what Afri-Job is about. I'm just curious to know through this meeting like how they can help me in my career journey. I've been seeing they do a lot with tech and business to see what other openings they have. And yeah, basically what they do. Yeah, so I'm more excited.
Awesome. Thank you, Itzon. Thank you. Yeah, I think this is the whole reason of this session is curiosity. This is why you're here, right? Curious to know what AfriJobs does and how they do it, and the different opportunities that you can take advantage of moving into your upcoming internship cycle. I think this is very timely because the AfriJob network works with a lot of people, and they themselves as well may have opportunities, who knows. We're up to 33 participants. Trey, if you feel okay to kick off now, let's go for it.
Thank you everyone for having me today. My name is Trey Hunt. I am one of the co-founders of the AfriJob network, which is a very fast-growing talent and recruitment startup based in Nairobi, Kenya. And just to make sure that everyone, everyone has a little bit of context, I will be leaving the video on during the course of the call, but I will be speaking into my phone. So just in case there's any connectivity issues from my computer or something, I should still be able to hear and speak with everyone during the course of the call. We want this to be a very interactive session. So I will be asking some questions to the audience. And at the same time, if there's ever any questions that anyone has or anything that people want clarification on, or comments, or people talking about their own past experiences, that's always very welcome. Just feel free to type in the chat or just interrupt me as we're going, and we'll all try our best to answer any questions or take any feedback or anything into consideration. So yeah, just to start off with a little bit of context on AfriJob, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But AfriJob is a talent and recruitment company based in Nairobi. And what we do is we work with fast-growing, exciting, dynamic companies all across Africa. So even though we're based in Kenya, we work with companies all across the entire continent. And so we're in the recruitment space. And so what that means is, let's say a company really needs help finding an operations manager or a finance person or an intern or whatever it may be, and they don't know where to get that person, or maybe they've been trying to find that person and they haven't been having much success. They then come to AfriJob, and AfriJob helps them to find the right type of talent to go into their organization. And so recruiters are always working with a lot of different companies, but AfriJob's bread and butter, you could say, is working with startup and scale up type of companies. And so we work with a lot of different type of companies, so multinationals, corporates, NGOs, but most of the companies that we've worked with over time have been startup, scale up type of companies. So before we go even further into that, who would like to enlighten anybody who might not know what a startup is? Because there's a lot of misconceptions about what a startup actually is. There's a lot of it's a hot word and a buzzword that a lot of companies and a lot of people like to say. But can someone just type in the chat or just speak, unmute themselves and just say what they feel a startup is? Be getting your mind ready around these type of questions and these type of topics, because that's what we'll be talking about a lot. But a startup, so according to Paul Graham, who is one of the co-founders of Y Combinator. Thanks Etienne. I see that Etienne says, a venture undertaken by an entrepreneur to validate a business idea. So I would say that is what maybe a young business is, or maybe an entrepreneurial venture is, but it's a little bit different than what a startup is. And so Paul Graham, who is one of the co-founders of Y Combinator, which is probably the most prestigious and most well-known startup accelerator and startup program in the world, he says that a startup is a company that is designed to grow fast. That's it. So a lot of people think that startups have to be tech businesses. They think that startups have to have, be using the most cutting edge type of technology, but that's not necessarily what a startup is. Many of the startups that we've seen today in the modern world, because of the kind of the universality of software, do tend to be technology based companies and technology based. But 60 years ago, or more than 60 years ago, 70 years ago, there was a restaurant chain that started in California and grew really fast over the next couple of years, called McDonald's. And so McDonald's, when it started, was not technology based in any way, but the rate at which it was growing and the concept that Ray Kroc had was, we need to grow really, really, really fast. And McDonald's ended up growing really, really fast. And so lots of startups today are technology based for the reasons previously mentioned, but a startup does not have to be technology-based or a tech-based company. It's just a company that is designed to grow fast. And so those are the type of companies that AfriJob has tended to work with. And so one of the main purposes of this session is for us to share a little bit more of what our insights have been in terms of what these companies are looking for and how people can work in these companies. But even beyond that, it's not just enough to work in these companies, but how can you progress and what is necessary to stay in these companies? Because the culture, which we'll talk about later, the culture of a startup company versus the culture of a corporate firm or an NGO tends to be very different. And then individual startups do tend to have their own particular culture and functionality at the same time. And so those are all things that need to be considered when people are thinking about what is the next career move for them, because everybody loves hearing everyone loves watching the movies about Steve Jobs, or loves hearing the stories of Dangote and these entrepreneurs who start these startups, but they are not necessarily the best fit for everybody. They may not be the right fit for you. And so over this, we'll talk a little bit more about the startup ecosystem here across the continent, as well as what you can do or what you should do if you're interested in such opportunities. Right, I'm seeing in the chat. Yeah, exactly what Desiree was saying in terms of a company that is striving for growth. That is what a startup is. So we go to the next slide. 1 second. And so here are the numbers for 2020 in terms of where there is a lot of startup activity across the continent. And so it's important for your journey as you're looking at what type of company that you may want to work for, you may not want to work for. It is important to realize where kind of the centers of the startup ecosystem are across the continent. And so maybe even if you really love a particular country, so maybe you really, really love Malawi, for example, or you really, really love Angola or something like that, or maybe you're from one of those countries, or you're just interested in them. But if your goal is to get involved specifically in the startup scene and you really want to get involved with these fast-growing, oftentimes tech-enabled companies, it's really important to know where is that, where are those companies centered, and also where is the money, where's the money that is going to those companies focused. And so here we talk about VC investment. Can anyone in the chat tell everybody what a VC is, or what the concept of VC is? Shalom says that VC stands for venture capital. And so what is venture capital, Shalom? Or anyone else, but Shalom, any insight on what venture capital is? No pressure, no pressure. It's not a quiz. It's not a quiz or anything. We're all just sharing ideas. We're all just sharing ideas. Exactly. Ruth hits it right on the head here. So a venture capitalist or venture capital firm, what they do is they give oftentimes money. It's almost always money. It can be other things, but they give money to companies in exchange for owning a part of that company. And so if that company is successful, then the venture capitalist will reap a very big reward. Oftentimes, if the company is unsuccessful, the venture capitalist will just lose their money. So oftentimes, many venture capital portfolios, the investor will probably lose money on 9 of every 10 investments. So 9 of every 10 companies that they invest in, those companies will probably fail and the investor will lose their money. But what the investor is counting on is that one of those companies that they invest in is going to become really big. And so just like to give people an understanding of this, this is outside of the African context. This is in the American context. But around 2004, an awkward, so there's one investor / businessman named Reid Hoffman, who founded LinkedIn. For anyone who's on LinkedIn, he founded LinkedIn. And around 2004, an awkward 19-year-old walked into his office with an idea. And so Reid Hoffman said that he was going to invest about $30,000 in this guy's idea. And so does anyone have any idea of who this young man was that walked into his office and what his company was? I'm pretty sure it's a company that most people here have heard of. Exactly, Etienne, right? It was Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg walked into his office with this idea called Facebook. Reid Hoffman invested $32,000 as a venture capitalist, and guess how much that $32,000 transformed into? Transformed into about 13 years later. Anyone have an idea? Not billions, but he did get a good return. That $32,000 became around $110 million. So that is kind of the mindset of a venture capitalist. And so when it comes to tracking kind of startup activity in Africa, one of the ways where you can kind of gauge how much activity is going on in a specific place or in a specific region is to look at how much investment is going in there. Because if there's more investment going into a region or more investment going into a region or more investment going into a country, then that usually means that there's a lot of startups there, or maybe there's some really successful startups there. And so if you're looking for startup opportunities, then it makes sense to go to countries or focus on countries where there is going to be more startups and more startup activity. It also means that if you yourself are thinking of starting a startup, you have to take these things into consideration. So as we can see from here, there's a lot of startup activity in Kenya and Nigeria. So that means that there's probably a lot of investors, even if they're not from Kenya or Nigeria, that are used to putting money in there, or that at least are familiar with putting money in those markets. So if you're starting your startup in, let's say, Central African Republic, even if you have a really good idea or you think it's a really good market opportunity, investors might not be familiar with that market, or they might think it's, if they don't see any other investors are putting money in that market, then they might say, oh, okay, maybe I also shouldn't be putting money in that market. I'll focus my money on regions or countries where there's a demonstrated history of doing so. And so, see, there's a question here. Are long-term growth potential, are quote, long-term growth potential, end quote, measures accurate when VCs decide which company or idea to fund? If so, to what extent, and how do VCs go about that? What do you mean in terms of long-term growth? Okay, if I understand the question correctly, so most VC firms have a have a kind of a firm span of 5 to 7 years. So that means that within those 5 to 7 years, they're going to invest kind of all the money that is in their fund. And so you have funds of different sizes. Some funds are very small, like maybe they only are a fund of $1 million and they only make a few investments a year of maybe $40,000 here, $50,000 here, $20,000 here. Those would be like very small funds. But then you also have very big funds that have billions and billions and billions of dollars. But the thing that all of these funds are looking for is they need a return on that money quickly. So long-term growth potential in a VC context is kind of 5 to 7 years. So they're looking to make their money back on you, or looking to make their money back on the company within 5 to 7 years. And so that means that your company needs to be moving really fast now so that it can get to the point where, that means that your company or the company needs to be moving really fast now, where within 5 to 7 years, the investor is going to make their money back. And so does anyone know how investors usually make their money back? So if I'm an investor and I invest $1 million in Shalom's startup, how does that money actually return to me? Or how do I get my money back? Does anyone know? Does anyone have any idea? Right. So I have equity. So let's say I spend $1 million. Let's say I give Shalom's company $1 million for let's say to get a percentage of an equity percentage in the company. How does that equity turn into actual money for me again? Okay, so there's two primary ways. Okay. So I see people have a couple of different kind of responses here. So in a traditional business, yes, the way that I am going to get my money back is probably getting dividends every quarter, dividends every year, or some type of profit sharing plan. But that's not the way that VCs want to make their money back. VCs need to move fast, and if it's going to take you 10 or 15 years for your company to get to a point where we're getting consistent dividends and consistent quarterly returns that makes it worth my while, that's way too long for me. And so the two ways that investors tend to make their money back is one, in acquisition. So let's say for example, we start a social media company here, and I invest $1 million. I invest $1 million in Shalom's social media company. Within a few years, Shalom's social media company is worth $100 million, and now Facebook has looked at it and says, we're interested in entering, this country. We're interested in entering this region. We think that we could do some really cool stuff with this technology. We're going to buy Shalom's company for $100 million. And so if my initial 1 million stake maybe got me 10% of the company as a VC or as a venture capitalist, then when Facebook makes that acquisition, because I own 10% of the company, I get $10 million return on that specific investment. So that's one way. And then another way oftentimes is IPO. So once the company, initial public offering, so once the company becomes public, meaning that regular people like you and me and everybody and 99.9% of people can buy shares of the company, then there's a stock price that now the investors also own. And so when you're talking with investors, or if you're at a startup and you know the startup is talking with investors, you know that the investor is thinking about, how am I going to get my money back? How am I going to get my returns on the company? And so they're oftentimes either looking for the company to go public, which is having an IPO, or they're looking for the company to be acquired or bought. But there are other ways in which investors can get their money back, but those tend to be some of the most common ways. And so when it comes to the African startup ecosystem, so these are the numbers from 2020. There's actually way more investment over 2021. So in 2021, there's around $4 billion of VC investment that was spread out across Africa. And still, most of those companies, though, that most of the money most of the countries where that money was dispersed are the ones that are indicated here. And I think actually it was around 60. I don't want to get anything wrong. I think it was around 60% was divided between Nigeria and Kenya, and then 40% was rest of Africa. But I'm not exactly sure on that. People should check on that. But these are the countries listed here are still the main kind of centers or hubs for VC investments in Africa, which also makes them hubs for startups. And where there's a lot of startup activity. So on to the next slide. Okay, cool. And so you can see here, this is some of the information from 2019 and some in terms of what are considered some of the biggest or most well-known startups across Africa. And so some of the big names that you can see here. Swivel is a really big name. They actually are now a $1 billion company based out of Egypt. They've spread their operations across many countries. They're also here in Kenya. But that was a company that was started, I think, in like 2016 or 2017, and it's already worth $1 billion. And so that's what we're talking about when investors and startups are really looking for growth. They want growth, expansion, moving really, really fast, because a traditional business is not going to be able to go from idea to being worth over $1 billion in just a few years. But Swivel was able to do that. For East Africa, Safe Boda is a really big name. They're currently in Uganda and also in Nigeria. And they're basically Uber for motorcycle taxis. Another, you could say, let's see if we can find another really, really popular one. Okay, so here we have probably the biggest name when it comes to African startups or startups in Africa is Andela. Does anybody know what Andela does, or what kind of Andela's history was? What Andela's kind of story was, or just any like what their value proposition was to the world? Go ahead, Ishimwe. I also sent some Googling.
Yeah, so it's a tech company, and mostly it does in Africa, and mostly even in Rwanda, it is even here. So it does give some courses on programming and mostly some web development. Yeah, and then it even provides some jobs other than that in the tech sector, and empowers people to know more about tech and do more in that sector. Yeah.
Exactly. That is a large part of what Andela does. Does anyone else have any other insights about Andela? No Googling. That should have been a rule in the beginning. No Googling. Yeah, but yeah, does anyone else have any insights about what Andela does? Okay, no worries. So basically when Andela first started out, what they realized is that, look, people all over the world need developers. The tech developers, programmers to write their code, to help them build their companies. Exactly, especially big IT companies. But there's a real big shortage of skilled tech professionals, even in more developed regions of the world, like even in the US or in like Western Europe, there's still a large shortage of these tech developers. So what if what we do is we train people locally across Africa to be really good at coding, and then we match them with really cool companies across the world to do their coding and tech stuff for them. So someone goes to a training program in Kigali, and then a few years later, they're able to work with Google. We're able to work with Google's like New York office, or they're able to work with Amazon's Seattle office, or whatever it may be. And so they've changed the business model a little bit over time. And they've changed the company a little bit over time, but that was the general idea of what of how Andela started. And it's another company that, once again, was just started a few years ago, but is already worth over. Oh, go ahead. Okay, sorry. It's a company that was also just started a couple of years ago, but is already worth over $1 billion. So, which is a unicorn, a private company that is valued over $1 billion. And so you can see that many of these companies. So Swivel is a bus, is basically a public transport or bus booking platform. SafeBoda is motorcycle taxis. Andela is providing IT skills and tech skills to big companies. So you can see that all of these companies are really just providing for really good services that people need. And so if you are also thinking about coming up with a startup, it can be really important to think about some of the most successful ones and what you need to do in order to be successful. Before we move on to the next slide, does anyone have any idea what I'd say the most popular or the hottest industry is right now in the African startup ecosystem? Exactly, fintech. So Etienne, what is fintech for people who don't know what fintech is? What is fintech?
From the knowledge I have, I think it's basically providing financial services to several mediums. I think people here in Mauritius can relate to juice payments that we usually use to buy things online and even in stores and shops. So yeah.
Exactly. Perfect, Etienne there. Where fintech stands for financial technology. And so it's basically providing financial services to people through technology. And so one of the really common statistics that you hear when people are talking about the African startup ecosystem is that 60% of people in sub-Saharan Africa are unbanked. And so that means they don't have access to loans, they don't have access to credit scores, they oftentimes don't have access to insurance, they don't have access to a lot of different things just because they don't have an equivalent of like a banking partner. And so a lot of the biggest startups here across the continent do serve in some type of financial capacity. But there's other ways in which you can do like a fintech company, like just with money transfer, savings, a lot of different things that can be done with fintech. But you'll see if you Google a lot of the top and hottest startups across the continent, many of them will be fintech companies. And one of the, if you want to kind of get your feet wet, one of those companies is called Flutterwave, which was actually started by one of the same people who started in Andela, but it's about transferring money across borders. And so yeah, that's a little bit on the startup ecosystem. Okay, cool. And so as you can see here, fintech is one of the really big industries. Also, of course, really big now in light of COVID. Health is really big. Agriculture, of course, is really big, with so many countries' populations being in the agriculture sector. So there's a lot of different sectors, but they're all intermingled with tech, albeit fintech being the biggest one. So here we have just a couple of some of the big companies that we talked about before. Paystack is a fintech company. They recently bought, or not recently, but a year or two ago, they were bought by another very big fintech company called Stripe for $200 million. You know, Flutterwave here, which was mentioned. Calorie-Wise is a savings app. So those are all fintech companies. Helium Health is a company that's digitizing medical records for hospitals across the continent. So the cool thing about startups, and I think what a lot of what makes young people, in particular, recent graduates, interested in startups, is that startups are always working on a very cool mission. Like, imagine if your work that you're working on, you know, is helping to digitize all of the records in a hospital. How many people are going to be able to be helped that way? How many people are now going to be able to trace their family history or find links between their family medical history with their family members, all because everything is kept in a computer and digitized, as opposed to being in some drawer in the basement of some hospital. Similarly, if you're dealing with something like Flutterwave, that allows for people to transfer money to people in other countries, relatives, friends, avoids a lot of the delays and stuff that come with doing bank transfer. You're helping people to solve a real problem. So one of the really cool things that a lot of people love about working in startups is that you're not just showing up to work and maybe pressing some keys on a computer, but you're actually doing work that really impacts people's lives, especially here on the continent, where so many of these companies and so many of these services are really needed. So these are a lot of the appeals of like working in a startup, which we'll talk about a little bit more when we talk about how to actually get involved with the companies themselves. But we're just delving a little bit here into the differences between, you know, are some of the characteristics of what it means to work in a startup, and what that would mean for you as an individual. So here's just a little bit more information, but we've already talked about a good amount of this. Just as we're talking about here, one of the main characteristics that you find when people are discussing startups are, what was the acquisition? Like, what was the result? And so you hear the exit, acquisition, 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 acquisition. And so that means that a bigger company or a fund bought the company. And then it says here for how much money it was bought for. And so if you're an investor, you get a percentage of that money, depending on how much of the company you own. But you can see here that many of these companies here, like Bionic, for example, Sendwave, Paystack, BetKing, those are all fintech companies. So also, if you're thinking of starting a company, you have to be keeping in mind, where have people seen success before? And so if people have seen success in a certain area, they're probably going to be drawn to a certain area, which can also explain why there are so many fintechs coming up, because people have seen so much success with fintechs over and over again. And these are just some of the examples here. There are also some others. Okay, and so really quickly about AfriJob. As mentioned, what we do at AfriJob is we work with these type of companies, these fast-growing, exciting, dynamic companies, to help them get really good top talent, which we'll talk about in the next section. But one of the things that we've really realized that a lot of these companies need is that they need to do more than just share a job description. They need to be able to share their vision, their culture, their mission, really put a face to the company, so that people who are talented and really looking at working at them will know more about the company than just some words on their website. And so what we're doing right now is that we're working with a lot of companies to brand them and make sure they're able to showcase their culture, showcase their vision, and showcase their mission to the world. And so keep an eye out on AfriJob, even in this quarter in Q1, because we really want to make sure that the companies that we work with are able to attract really good talent. And we want really good talent, like the people on this call, to be able to know exactly about the company that they're working for, and see a little bit beyond just the surface level of the company. And so here you have, for example, this is one of the companies that we work with called Twende, which is a logistics company based here out of Nairobi. And so we want people to be able to know that it's more than just Twende. There's Kipto, there's the entire rest of the team, there's the vision, there's the story, and have people then further engage with the company there. And yeah, so we going back to our backgrounds, we've worked with over 200 companies in around a dozen African countries, so we know a good amount about what these type of companies are looking for, what they struggle with, and all of that. And so now you're saying, okay, Trey, I understand now more about the startup scene. I understand a little bit about what a startup is specifically versus some other type of companies. Now, how can I get involved? And so there's a couple of things that we suggest, particularly for recent graduates or even people who are in school, but looking to get involved with these companies. And the first thing that we suggest is personal branding. And so we have an entire other discussion and workshop on personal branding and how to use various technological tools in order to do that. But personal branding is oftentimes critical when it comes to wanting to work with these companies and being known by these companies. So what is personal branding? Can anyone in the chat or anyone just speak on what personal branding is? Any ideas? Okay, no worries. Yes, exactly. It is creating your unique identification. And so your personal brand is what other people are saying about you when you're not in the room. So whether you think you have, exactly, it is how you present yourself to others, but it is also what other people think about you when you're not in the room. So whether or not you think you have a personal brand or not, we all have a personal brand in some capacity or another. Some of us maybe have a stronger personal brand than others, or some of us may have a weak personal brand. But having a personal brand is something that we all have, because anytime that we're not in the room and someone is speaking about us, that is our personal brand being reflected there. And so how is personal branding related to, you might be saying, okay, it's great to know that I need to have a personal brand, but how is personal branding related to working with these companies? And so first off, it's important to understand why personal branding is important. First off is, if you have a strong personal brand, it builds trust, so that people think of you as a legitimate either thought leader, or think of you as a legitimate person in the space that you work in. And so it's really important to have a personal brand from a trust perspective, because it removes doubt when people are engaging with you. Second of all, the larger your personal brand, the easier it is to connect with other people, because either they've heard of you before, or maybe they know someone who's heard of you, or they saw something about you before, and so they're a little bit curious and they're already willing to engage. And so it's easier to build connections there. In a similar vein, similar to trust, it also builds credibility. If you have a personal brand of being someone who is reliable or who knows something about a particular topic, people are much more easy to believe what you're saying. You also become you also get more confidence over time, just because you're getting reinforced as being a thought leader, and then you're also be seen as more more authentic. And so the way that we recommend building your personal brand is through the platform of LinkedIn. And so we have an entire other kind of session and entire other workshop on how to build your personal brand through LinkedIn. But the very, 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 very short summary is, if you're very active on LinkedIn, you're sharing valuable content and you're engaging with other people's content, it makes it very easy to build a personal brand, particularly if you're in the startup space. Because the startup space, there's always something happening. There's always something dynamic there. There's always companies that are looking for smart people to come join them. One of the big things about startups that we keep talking about is growth. Growth, 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 growth. One of the main ways that companies grow is by hiring more people, which means that companies are always looking to see, either for now or for later, who can come into their team. And so if you're constantly putting out good content about your industry or an industry you're interested in, maybe you don't actually have as much experience in fintech, but you've read some articles about fintech, you've talked with some people who've worked in fintech companies, and you see that there's big potential there, but you don't necessarily have a way in immediately. Just start posting content about fintech, but content that has an actual, that provides value. And provides insight and leaves people thinking, I think that was actually some really good content. And more people will be able to understand you as a person, and also more people will take interest in you. And so I know not everyone maybe likes social media, and not many people might not like being online so much. But when it comes to building your personal brand, LinkedIn is the place to be. And the reason that we say LinkedIn is because it's the #1 professional network. So there's literally no other place in the world, either in the physical world or in the virtual world, where you can have as much access to professionals who are close to what you're looking for as LinkedIn. And so think about, just compare it as a final thing, compare it this way. With a single LinkedIn post, if it does pretty well, it can get several hundred or even thousands of impressions or views. Thousands of people have now been touched by what you're saying. And depending on how good or how high quality that content is, maybe perhaps even more people will look at it and engage with it. In the physical world, if you want to take that same message and deliver it to hundreds or thousands of people, how would you do it? It would take you a long time. You don't know who you're talking with. You don't know if those people are interested. But LinkedIn as a platform and creating content that provides value on LinkedIn is an incredible way to build your personal brand. I personally know several people who have gotten plenty of great opportunities, job opportunities, and other just general type of opportunities just off of their personal brand and the content that they are sharing. And so it's something that we highly, highly recommend. We don't have enough time to go into all of the details of that this time, but that is one of the really, really good ways. Post content, post valuable content, and it'll be much easier for these companies to know that you are out there, because all of these companies are on LinkedIn, and so they have people who are also eyeing LinkedIn as well. So another way that we recommend to begin working with these companies, or to at least think about how you can work with these companies, is by working with recruiters like AfriJob. And so different recruiters have different specialties. And just once again, to remind everybody what a recruiter is, a recruiter or a recruitment agency works with companies, not necessarily a startup company. AfriJob tends to work with startup companies, but it's not necessarily a startup company. Works with companies to match them with really good talent. And so once again, if Flutterwave or Paystack is looking for a software engineer and they can't find one, they will come to AfriJob and they'll say, we're really looking for this software engineer. We know that you guys work on this specifically, finding people, finding really good talent, help us find them. And so as a job seeker, or as somebody who is looking for opportunities, it never hurts to speak with recruiters. And where do all recruiters hang out? A lot of recruiters hang out on LinkedIn as well. And so as a job seeker, as someone as an opportunity seeker, a recruiter is always talking with companies. It's literally their job to be talking with companies. And so it really helps to build a relationship with recruiters. I am not sure if this session is going to be sent via email. Emmanuel, is it going to be sent via email?
Did you mean the recording?
Yes, the recording.
Yes, we're going to send the recordings out.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so everyone, the recording will be sent out via email. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Emmanuel. And so, if you want to engage with recruiters, though, and it's if you want to engage with recruiters to find jobs at these opportunities, then it's important to understand how recruiters work. So here is just what a recruiter is, as we just discussed, someone who helps companies find qualified professionals or individuals for positions. That's what a recruiter does. And so the first thing that you have to understand when it comes to working with recruiters is that a recruiter, 99 out of 100 recruiters do not work for job seekers. They work for companies. So that means that even if you have a very good recruiter, or there's a recruiter that works in a space that you like, that recruiter is going to be focused on getting the companies that they work with talent. They're not going to be as focused on making sure that you as an individual are able to find a job. And so that's why it's good to have a good network of multiple recruiters, because recruiters, of course, are looking to bring people into the organizations that they work with. And so, of course, if your profile is a great match, they're going to want to make that connection. But it's not like every single day they're waking up and thinking, how can I get John a job? How can I get Mary a job? What they're waking up and they're thinking, Flutterwave needs top talent. Paystack needs top talent. How do I make sure that they can get the talent that they're looking for? Now, where the intersection is let's say you talk with a recruiter today, you're looking for a software engineering job. And the recruiter says, I'm sorry, we don't have any software engineering opportunities right now, but we can keep in mind. We can keep each other in mind, we can keep each other in contact. If you are constantly building your personal brand, if you are constantly reminding people that you are out there and sharing valuable insights that's showing your value and your general insights on a specific topic, it's going to be much easier for that recruiter and for other recruiters to remember you and to keep you in mind. And so there have been many times where I've been in contact with a job candidate. There was not an opportunity at the moment, but because I was seeing that person's content, because I was seeing the consequences and the effects of that person's personal brand, the next time that I did see an opportunity that matched with that person, I was able to link them up with the company. And so it's important to understand, just once again, that the recruiter works for the company. The recruiter, 99 out of 100 recruiters are working for the companies that they work for. They're not working for the job seekers, but there are definitely actions that you can take as an individual to make sure that your chances of being matched with those companies is improved. And that revolves around building your personal brand. Similarly, how do recruiters get paid? Similarly, 99 out of 100 recruiters get paid by the company. You have, I've heard some horror stories of people who said that they were promised, if they paid X amount of money to the recruiter would give them a job. 99 out of 100 recruiters do not work that way. Recruiters get paid by the company once the company has placed somebody in, once the recruiting agency has placed somebody in that company. And so there's almost never, besides these horror stories, I've never come across an actual recruitment company or recruitment agency that charges the candidates. And so if you are engaging with recruiters and you do find a recruiter that says, I will charge you a certain amount of money to find you a job, definitely do some double checking and do some investigating there, because the only way that I could see that working is if that person is specifically dedicated to finding you a job. That's different. But if it's a standard recruiter who is primarily, whose client is the companies, then the recruiter will be paid by the companies. And so that's important to keep in mind as you engage with recruiters, just to protect yourself and to make sure that you're not, you don't fall victim to any charlatans or anything like that. And so, yeah, we just talked about this. Should candidates pay money to recruiters? 99 times out of 100, the answer is no. There may be times when, as I said, maybe there's a very specific arrangement with someone who says, my job is to find candidates a job, not to find companies talent. That is a different type of scenario than your standard recruitment agency. But 99 out of 100 recruiters, 99 out of 100 recruitment agencies work on the client side. And so work on the company side, which means that as a job seeker, you almost certainly should not be paying money to recruiters. And so people say, okay, now I know a little bit more about startups. I know a little bit more about recruiters. What's the best way to actually work with a recruiter? And so there's two things to keep in mind. First is that recruiters have specific industries that they work in, that they tend to work in. So as I mentioned, AfriJob works primarily with startup type of companies, though we are trying to diversify and work with other type of companies as well. But that means that if you're really interested in working in an NGO, for example, and the recruiter that you're talking with, they only work with big multinationals like Coca-Cola, P&G, here in Kenya, it'd be like Safaricom or something like that, then that's not really the right type of recruiter that you should be talking with. Of course, it does not hurt to be talking with that person. But if this recruiter works primarily in large multinational companies, and you're looking to work in an NGO, then they're most likely not going to be coming across opportunities that are a match for you. Similarly, if you're looking to work in a startup, it's great to talk with a recruiter or recruitment agency from AfriJob, because we work with startups specifically. And we also work with startups specifically in Africa. But maybe it's your dream. You've always wanted to work in Japan. I've always loved Japan. I love Japan. Like, I speak Japanese, like all this kind of stuff. I'd love to work there. Well, then either it would be good to find a recruiter who like literally like lives in Japan and who works in Japan, or a recruiter who has connections to Japanese companies or something like that. So similarly, maybe you're just kind of making that a little bit more localized. Maybe you're interested in the startup scene, but you're interested in the startup scene in Nigeria, and you find out that there's a company, so there's a recruitment company that works for startups, but they only do startups in Southern Africa. So that person, even though they do startups, they're probably not the right type of person for you to talk with. They can probably connect you. They might know some people who can get you to where you're trying to go. But just because they work with startup companies, if you're interested in startup companies in Nigeria, and this person works with startup companies in Southern Africa, then it might not be the right type of fit. Once again, we're not saying that you shouldn't talk with these people, you shouldn't engage, but just that when it comes to optimizing your potential for opportunities, then it's important to work with recruiters who are working in the industries that you are interested in, and also interested in the also working in the geographies that you are interested in. So that is a little bit in terms of how to best work with recruiters. Once again, a lot of recruiters are on LinkedIn. It's pretty easy to find them. It's pretty easy to find them. So depending on what you're looking for, you can just connect with them and see if they can see if they have anything in mind for you, or if they know any companies that might suit your profile. Okay, and so now you say, okay, I understand a little bit more about startups. I understand a little bit more about the type of startups that are out there, the different industries, and I understand how I can engage with them. Personal brand, working with recruiters. What else can I do? And so in this section, I want to talk a little bit more about, based off our interactions with hundreds of these type of companies, what are the type of things that they're looking for in individuals? Because as I mentioned in the beginning, the profile who is going to be okay at Coca-Cola, or be okay at P&G, or be okay at an MTN or a Safaricom, is not necessarily the same type of profile that is going to be a great fit for a startup company. And so that means that just because, that we'll talk about that in a second. So first, when it comes to hiring managers of startups, what do they struggle the most with? There's two things that they tend to struggle with. First is the skills fit. So finding people who are actually able to do the type of job that needs to be done. So particularly if that's a technical job, like a finance job or software developer, sorry, or maybe like a graphic designer, like these type of more like technical jobs. But then also is very much the cultural fit, which, as I said, we'll talk about a lot, is that one of the things that people don't think about enough when they're evaluating an offer from a company or evaluating which company they should work with is, yes, maybe the package is what I'm looking for in terms of the money or the benefits or the location and this type of stuff. But is it the right fit for me culturally as an individual? Do the values of the company, does the work style of the company, does the atmosphere of the company match what I am looking for as an individual? And so hiring managers, those are the two things that they're looking for. And that's one of the things that we hear almost every day is, yes, let's say someone's hiring for a finance position, they're hiring for a junior accountant, they're hiring for a junior data scientist, something like that. They'll say, it's important that the person knows ABC skill, but it's equally as important that they are okay with this value, with this value, with this value. You know, we work on Saturdays, we do this, we do that. We expect people to work remotely. We expect people to come into the office 1 to 2 times a week. We expect people to be in the office every single day by 8 a.m. Whatever it may be, those intangible aspects are also critical for hiring managers. And so we've already talked about this a little bit. One of the things that you can also do when it comes to interacting with people, and this is on LinkedIn, as I mentioned, we have an entire other kind of LinkedIn guide in terms of how to use LinkedIn, but you can also reach out one to people in your network, which is great because ALU, there's a huge like ALU network of people who are probably already working in the organizations that you want to work in, but also you can reach out to people directly depending on the social platform. So if you're really interested in working at Safe Boda, for example, the hiring manager for Safe Boda is most likely going to be on some type of platform, probably LinkedIn. And so depending on the type of content that you're producing, your personal brand, all this type of stuff, you may be able to, instead of applying through the normal means, you may be able to just interact directly with people who are in the company, and they can direct you as to how you want to go. Yeah, we can talk about optimizing LinkedIn later. And then one of the big differences when it comes to using your personal brand and using a job board is that a job board is, you're just submitting your application into a sea of applications. And the way that your application is going to be sorted is most likely through keyword search that's being run by some applicant tracking software that the company is using. But the difference with networking and building your personal brand is that now it's more people are focused on you as a person. It's not you in a sea of people all applying for the same position, all applying for the same thing, being sorted through a keyword search. It's now your individual content, your individual brand, your individual thoughts, your individual insights, which are able to pierce much deeper than just applying to on a regular job site. So networking is really critical, both in the physical world as well as in the virtual world. And so similarly, if you use a virtual platform, it's easy to connect with dozens of people a day. Whereas in the physical world, it can be a little bit more challenging, particularly in these COVID times. But it's important to maximize both avenues, just so you can continue to extend your reach. And so when it comes to actually engaging employers, there are a lot of key aspects that people need to keep in mind. Okay, and so when it comes to what these companies are looking for, you first have to create a plan, and you first have to have the right type of mindset when it comes to how you're going to engage these startup type of companies. And so the first thing that you have to think about is, what skills do I have? And so I talked previously about how the cultural fit is important, but the hard skills themselves are important. So if you, let's say you're really interested in working, let's say you're really interested in agriculture. And so you really want to work with there's a big company here based out of Kenya called Twiga Foods. And so what Twiga Foods realized is that, look, you have a lot of farmers who are making food. Then you have people in the market who are not the farmers, who are actually selling the food. But it's so difficult to connect those people. Like, there's so many middlemen in between. There's a lot of really difficult logistics. And that affects like the pricing of the food. That affects the pricing that the farmer is able to sell their food for the consumer, or for like the final buyer. It makes it really difficult to know, for example, if you're getting the best price, this type of stuff. And so what Twiga Foods said was like, okay, why don't we just create a platform that connects the people who are actually creating or harvesting the food and the people who are selling it. And then we eliminate kind of all the difficulties that come in between that. And so Twiga Foods is now one of the biggest startups in all of Africa. But let's say you've read about the Twiga Foods story, or you've gone to the AfriJob platform and you know about Twiga Foods now, and you're like, oh wow, I really want to work with Twiga Foods, and you see the type of roles that they are hiring for. So first, you have to know, what are your high value skills? So are those people skills? Are those like actual, like more technical skills, like financial skills, data science, like software engineering? These are the type of things that you have to ask yourself personally. If you see certain type of jobs that are continuously coming up and you don't have those type of skills, what are you going to do either to work in a different way or to acquire those skills? And so, especially since you are still in university, it's a great opportunity now. If you're interested in moving into this space, look at the type of roles that these companies are hiring for and see, okay, do I have these skills? Do I not have these skills? If I don't have these skills, what do I need to do to get them? If I do have these skills, are my skills good enough to match what the job requirements of many of these companies are? So the first thing that you have to do as an individual is look at the type of opportunities that you are interested in. Look at the companies that you're interested in and see, do I have the skills now to work in that company? If I do, how can I improve them? If I don't, what do I need to do to get those type of skills? So that's one. Two, we already talked about this, hard skills versus soft skills, but this is particularly the case when it comes to, I'd say, more technical type of positions. One of the things that the companies that we talk with a lot, one of the things that we talk with companies a lot is, yes, it's important for people to have these hard skills, but if they can't write an email well, if they can't converse well, if they don't have good writing, these are all things that can oftentimes get in the way of an otherwise very strong job applicant. So these are all things that need to also be kept in mind, is that it's not that the hard skills don't matter. The hard skills, of course, do matter. But if you are able to combine the soft skills with the hard skills, then that can be a really big, that will be a really big advantage for you. And so when it comes to the difference between startups and kind of corporate type of companies, there's a very big difference. And so this is what I've been alluding to before when I was saying that not everyone who's the right fit for Coca-Cola, P&G, Safaricom, and MTN is going to be the right fit for a startup. So one of the main things that startups are looking for when it comes to the soft skills or the intangible aspect of things is this person hungry? Does this person have drive? Is this person going to go the extra mile? And as a younger person that's coming into the organization, that's going to be one of your biggest value adds, being able to show eagerness, because oftentimes startups are not 9-to-5 type of companies. They're companies where you're going to be working a lot of hours but the potential for growth, both on an individual level as well as for the company, are tremendous. And so if you're somebody who is maybe you want your day to end at 5, you don't want to think about work once you leave the office or once you shut down your computer, then a startup environment might not be the best type of environment for you. It doesn't mean that you're not, it doesn't mean you're not smart. It doesn't mean you're not a top talent. It doesn't mean that you're not a really good person to have in an organization. It just means that the startup type of environment may not be the right type of environment for you. Similarly, from a corporate perspective, if you're looking for something that is a little bit more stable. So one of the things about startups is that they're young companies. So a startup, if it has a couple of bad months, can run out of money and fall apart. So that's never going to happen if you go to Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is you're never going to come into the office one day at Coca-Cola and find out that Coca-Cola ran out of money. But that can happen at a startup. At the same time, you're not going to come into Coca-Cola as an intern and be leading a department in 1 or 2 years, because it's already an established company. There's not that much room for growth. Whereas one of the biggest fintech companies here in Kenya, I personally know a guy who he came in as an intern, and a couple of years later, he was actually the country manager. So he was running the entire operations for the entire country of Kenya, even though he'd just come in as an intern, because there's tremendous room for growth in a startup, which doesn't necessarily exist in a larger company. So it depends on you. If you're maybe more open to risk, but you're also more open to growth, then a startup is probably a really good fit for you. Whereas if you're maybe someone who wants you just want something stable, maybe want a higher salary in the beginning, and don't want to take as much risk, you want to know that for the next few years you're set. A corporate could be a better fit for you. And so just to talk about how people can find people can find opportunities at startups via AfriJob. So we talked about the differences here, how people can use different resources. So right now we're currently changing our platform. And so our platform is going to be changing soon. But in the meantime, we do have a website where people can submit their information. We do have a website where people can submit their information in terms of the type of roles they're looking for, their experience, this type of stuff. And on our new platform, we're also going to have a similar type of option for people to apply to companies, and also to input their information into it so they can be in our database, so that if the right type of opportunity comes up, we can place them with the right type of company. The caveat though is that many of the companies that we work with do tend to look for more, I'd say mid to senior level talent. And so while some companies are interested in interns, most of the companies that we work with, interns or junior level type of people. And we still would be very keen on receiving those type of profiles. Many of the companies that we work with are looking for more mid to senior level people. Okay, so Juma has posted, what's the difference between a recruiter and a headhunter? So some people, the terms, I use the terms interchangeably. I use the terms interchangeably, but some people have a very specific difference. And so some people think that a recruiter is somebody who either is working internally for a company. So if you're at Twigger Foods and you're the recruiter for Twigger Foods, that means that you only recruit for Twigger Foods. You're an employee for Twigger Foods, you only recruit for Twigger Foods, and you basically do all of the recruiting for Twigger Foods. You don't work with any other companies. Some other people think that what a recruiter is it's someone who just posts jobs. They post jobs, they have a database of people, and then they match people in the database with companies. Whereas a headhunter, as a lot of headhunters like to call themselves, is someone who specifically looks for specific individuals. So they oftentimes don't post jobs. They sometimes don't have a database. They just look for specific individuals, and then will reach out to those specific individuals to match them with jobs. Whether that be someone who's already working in another company, which is called poaching, like you poach someone from one company to put them in another one, or if it's just maybe someone else who they happen to know. So the two can be used I think the two can be used interchangeably, but some people do like to differentiate between recruitment and headhunters. Yes, and headhunters normally have an amazing network. They need a really good network, so they can always be finding the right person to match into the next type of position. And so yeah, the new AfriJob platform should be coming out in March. And so be keeping an eye out for that, because then you can put your details there and also get a good look into some of the really cool companies that we work with, also that just are generally on the continent. But in the meantime, you can go to our current website. Though that website may direct you to our new website. But basically, just to give your information to AfriJob, we also have cv@afrijob.org, which I can just put that in the chat. We have cv@afrijob.org, which if you send your CV there, at least it will be in our database. So that the next time that any opportunity comes up, you'll at least be in our database for when that search begins. Okay. And so how do you pursue a recruiter as a career? And so that depends on the type of recruitment that you want to do. So there's what we call agency recruiters, which is what AfriJob does, which is where as recruiters, we work with all different types of companies. So we work with hundreds of companies to give them a million different type of roles. We've had some roles that are as, I'd say, common as like a sales manager or a finance manager or something like that. We've also had some very complicated, very rare roles, like there's a specific chemical, there's a specific type of, there's a company that made bricks at a very specific chemical. And so they needed a chemist who had a mastery of this specific type of chemical who could help advise them on how to build bricks in this type of way. Also, when it comes to kind of strange type of positions, depending on the type of company that you're working with, and especially with startup type companies, you never know what you're going to get. And so for agency recruiters, you can oftentimes just reach out to them and see if they're hiring or they know anybody who is hiring. You have smaller firms that are kind of more startup type firms like AfriJob, but then you also have global firms that are like multi-billion-dollar companies like Korn Ferry or Hydric Struggles, these type of companies. And so to pursue a recruiter as a career, as an agency recruiter, I'd say the main characteristics that you need are you need to be charismatic, you need to be a people person, you need to be willing to put in like long hours and like just work really hard. Because, for example, because recruitment is oftentimes like a global type of industry, maybe the candidate that you're looking for this company is in China, or maybe this person is in California or something. And so there could be a huge time difference between where you are and where they are, and you're going to need to if you're working with someone in California, for example, maybe they get off work at 5 p.m. their time, but that's going to be maybe like midnight your time or something. But if that is the perfect candidate, you have to be ready not just to speak with that person, but also really be able to sell them the opportunity and sell them on why this is a really great opportunity and open their mind as to why they should be interested in this. And so that's if you want to work as an agency recruiter. For internal recruitment, that's once again where you work for Coca-Cola specifically, you work for Trigger Foods specifically, and you do the internal hiring for these type of companies. For those, one, you can go into those directly, but oftentimes a lot of agency recruiters will eventually go what's called going in-house to go work with specific firms. And so you similarly need like really good people skills. You need probably really good like emotional intelligence, really good harmony and like teamwork ability if you're working internally, because you're going to be building the culture and you're going to be building the team of the company that you're working with. And so all of that is really, really important. So yeah, you can get into it either just by reaching out to people directly or by like finding these firms and talking with them or applying through their website or whatever it may be. And so I know we have about 10 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions? This is just stuff on how to prepare for interviews. Does anyone have any questions for me, either about startups or about how to work with them, or about AfriJob, or about jobs in general, or some of the mistakes and stuff that we've seen over the years? Does anyone have any questions? Do we offer internships? Is that offering internships at AfriJob or offering internships at the companies that we work with? So we actually are planning to offer internships. We actually are planning to offer internships starting from this month, actually. So I'd say yes, we do. But then also it's important. It's important to yes, I say yes, we do. But it's also important to understand that not all roles in a specific company are what that company does. So for example, at AfriJob, we have recruiters on the team, but we also have a sales team, which is reaching out. We have a content team, which is creating content. And so we're very much a recruitment company, or we very much do recruitment, but there's also other roles within a company. And so one other thing that I wanted to say that's in my mind is that when it comes to working with startups, because so many startups are tech enabled, a lot of people think that they need to have a technical background. They need to know how to code, they need to know data science, they need to know this, because these are tech companies. But that's not the case. Tech companies also need marketing. They also need people to run their operations. They also need finance. They also need like communications. They also need all the things that every other type of company needs. It's just that they have a tech background. In the same sense that not everyone who works in a big pizza company is making pizza. People are doing other stuff as well. Not everyone at McDonald's is flipping hamburgers. Most people aren't flipping hamburgers in McDonald's. So similarly, if you're thinking of working in any of these companies and you see it's a tech company, don't necessarily be discouraged if you don't have a tech background. Actually, a lot of the big tech titans in the world don't have a tech background themselves. So that's also something to keep in mind. So to answer your question, yes, AfriJob does offer internships, but not all of those internships are necessarily in the recruitment department. It would depend on what the person is looking for.
I might have a small question. Can you hear me properly?
I can.
Okay, awesome. I just wanted to know, do you consider yourself as being a startup? And if yes, how long has that been? And how far do you project yourself into remaining a startup before, it goes big scale kind of thing?
Sure. So we definitely do consider ourselves a startup. So we started in 2019, and now we're going into 2022. And so we want 2022, and we plan for 2022 to really be the takeoff year for AfriJob. One of the things the way that we say that we're handling things here is that we're transforming the way that recruitment is done. We're transforming the way that recruitment is done across Kenya, across East Africa, and across the African continent in terms of how companies go about recruiting talent. It's not enough anymore to just post a job board. Just post a job on a job board and think that you're going to get the best talent. You have to showcase your culture, have to showcase your vision, have to showcase your mission. And so 2022 is the year where we intend on doing that. We have a lot of big plans in store. So yeah, I'd say we're still very much in startup mode.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Personally, I wish you all the best for your endeavors. From the recruitment background myself, I can only imagine how complicated it can be sometimes sourcing talent and getting the right person on board at the right company. And I found it to be an amazing experience, and I hope it continues to be for AfriJob and the whole team as well. I see Blessing.
Thank you.
Blessing, no, you're welcome. You're welcome, Trey. Blessing, I see you have your hand raised. Please unmute and ask your question.
Okay, greetings, everybody. I just have a very brief question. I want to understand, like, as a recruiting firm, or should I say as a recruiting company, how do you measure your clients' satisfaction? Like, since your clients are companies, how do you measure their satisfaction? Is it after they've already taken the recruited personnel and evaluated the person, like after a month or 3, or is it before sending the personnel to the company? I'd just like to understand. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. So the way that you measure client satisfaction is after the placement has been made. I'll kind of reframe the question. So as a recruiter, you do have 2 people that you have to satisfy. You have to satisfy the client, and then you also have to satisfy the candidate. And so on the one hand, you don't want to put the candidate in a horrible situation in a company that they hate. But at the same, on the one hand, you don't want to put a candidate in a horrible situation that they hate, but you also don't want to put the candidate in a situation that they love, but that the company doesn't like. And so after the placement has been made, so let's say someone is starting a job on like March 1st, for example. After the placement has been made, it's important to check in with both the client and the candidate periodically, just to make sure that things are going as well as they're supposed to be. Because even though the person is now in the company, it's still your job as a recruiter to make sure that the person has a smooth transition into the company, that the company is doing a good job of onboarding that person in, that there's not too much of a clash, or there's not anything that was kind of not said previously that is now being revealed. And so you just have to talk with both the client as the company and also with the individual, because recruitment is very much a relationship based industry. So you need to have a really good network. As was previously said, you need to have a really good network of candidates who that you can place in companies, but you also need to maintain really good relationships with your clients, because if you place them with a bad person, even one time, you may lose that relationship with them and they might go to someone else. And so it's just a matter of keeping a human aspect and making sure that you're able to maintain a good relationship with both the clients, as in the companies that you work with, and the candidates, and just getting their honest feedback on their experience.
Awesome, thank you. That's fascinating. Though I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. How have you managed to maneuver around the challenges that comes with career development, or maybe training professionals, right? That's to career development.
Okay, so we don't work as much in the career development aspect as we do in the recruitment aspect, but I think one of the things that we found with the people that we've talked with, and both from the candidate side and from the client side, is that people sometimes need to lower, I don't want to say lower their expectations, but they need to be more open to the potential of growth. So for example, maybe you think that after graduating university, you should have a certain salary at this level, at a company of this level, and you should be getting the benefits of this level. And it can be great to have that in your mind, and great to have that as what you expect. But I have seen people who have literally waited years and passed on great opportunities because those opportunities didn't match exactly what they had in their mind. Whereas I've also seen people who have, particularly in a startup context, taken kind of a position that's more geared towards learning, and then within a few months or within a year or something like that, have risen beyond where they had even expected to be, just because they were willing to grow and not were willing to grow into the position that they knew they had the potential to go into. And so when it comes to professional development and career development, I think your expectations are critical, and just being flexible with your expectations, and not necessarily thinking that every job or that every opportunity out there has to fit exactly into how you have it in your mind.
Thank you so much for that. I think that was a really good opportunity for some perspective of like how recruitment works and how to set ourselves up individually for these sorts of endeavors. Before I throw it to Evelyn for a last question, because we're already, I think we're a couple of seconds over time already. Just a verbal announcement, just to remind you to fill in the feedback form, please, just to give us a bit of feedback on the session, and so we have the opportunity to make it better for each and every one of you. Thank you, Emmanuel, for repasting it again in the chat box, and I'll send it to Evelyn for a last question.
Hello, I have had connection issues in this session, but I wanted to ask, like, how can we engage with AfriJob? So I heard you say maybe we have to post a CV somewhere, like, I think there's a link you shared. So do you post like jobs on a board, or like how can we get in touch with those startup companies through AfriJob?
Sure. So yeah, so there's multiple ways. One, cv@afrijob.org. You can email your CV there. Two, I really recommend every single day we post different opportunities on LinkedIn. So if you follow AfriJob on LinkedIn, just the AfriJob network, the AfriJob network on LinkedIn. We post jobs there literally every single day, so you can see there. And then our website is currently in a transition period, but from March, currently now you can put your information on our website and it will go into our database. But also from March, we should have a new website, which should make everything a little bit easier and also give more of a face to the companies that we are working on. So cv@afrijob, LinkedIn, following our page on LinkedIn, and then our website.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, I think we're 2 minutes past. Trey, do you have another opportunity to answer a question? Is it not too much overtime for you?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, Asha, please ask your question then. I just wanted to make sure. Yes, you can unmute and ask a question, no worries.
Hi, good afternoon. Please, I want to ask, if we approach like a recruiter and he interviews us for whatever job position we're interested in, like he makes sure that we're a good fit for that job position in that company. After the interview with the recruiter, are we still going to have to go through another interview process with the company itself? Or will the recruiter just take us from like his own company then to the company we want to actually work with straight away?
Thank you. That's a good question. So there's two aspects to that. So just because the recruiter thinks that you're a good fit for the company, maybe the company itself doesn't think you're a good fit for the company. So the recruiter, let's say the recruiter has a really good intro call with you. What they will most likely do next is they'll send your CV or they'll send your profile to the company. Then it is up to the company to decide whether they like you or whether they don't like your profile. So maybe, and this has happened to me several times where I spoke with candidates that I thought were amazing. I thought they were a great fit for the company. But then when you share their profile with the company says, actually, this person doesn't have this, they don't have this, or they don't have that. And so we're actually not going to be like proceeding with them. So that's one scenario. But the second scenario is you are actually a really good fit for the company. Even so, once again, the recruiter is not, does not have strong decision-making power within the internal decision-making process of the company. So if I recommend a candidate to a company, or if a recruiter recommends a candidate to a company, that candidate will still most likely have to go through the interview process, unless it's an extremely exceptional candidate or it's a very strange scenario or something like that. Let's say a company has 3 rounds, maybe first round interview with the hiring manager, then with the CEO, and then a group interview with the board or something like that. Then the recruiter will pass you on to the company. The company will say, this is a strong candidate. Let's send them to the hiring manager. And then you'll go through the process like that. So in almost every case, unless the recruiter has, I say, a very strong relationship with the company that they're working for, but I'd say it's very, very rare that even if you've done that initial interview with the recruiter, that you're going to get hired immediately. You still have to go through the hiring process that the company has internally, just so they can make sure that you're the right fit all the way.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Trey. We are 5 minutes over time. Thank you for indulging us, Trey, and staying back these 5 minutes. Thank you to all the students as well on the call who stayed back as well. Really, really appreciate it. I'm going to say a massive thank you to Trey for providing so much insight. May it be from the startup perspective, from what employers are looking for, the recruitment sector and industry, and you know what companies are looking for, hard skills, soft skills. I guess do you have an email address apart from the one that you pasted, Trey, that students can send questions to you on, or some way of contacting you either on LinkedIn or somewhere?
Sure. I would say you can reach me on LinkedIn. My name is just Trey Hunt on LinkedIn. And then also my personal email is trey@afrijob.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Trey. Please, students, try not to drown Trey in emails and questions as much as possible. But yes, do not hesitate as well at the same time to ask your questions. Thank you so much for being with us today, Trey. Really, really appreciate it. Students, I really hope you got some nice gems and learning lessons from the session, and you're able to implement and take some solid action steps towards making your next internship cycle valuable, and maybe more of an easy one this time around with the information that was shared. Being able to personally brand yourself to make your job easier, may it be digitally, virtually, in person, etc. So keep these gems close to heart and make them work out for you. We are available as the SPD team for any coaching sessions. If you want to catch up, just go on student support on Career Dev Central, and you'll be able to find the links to book us in. Again, Trey, thank you very much for hosting this and being with us today. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you very soon, hopefully.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, everyone, for giving me the opportunity to share. And yeah, hope everybody has a great rest of the day. And as mentioned, yeah, don't hesitate to reach out to me either on LinkedIn or email. And yeah, wishing everybody a really great internship cycle.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice weekend, everyone. Make the most of it.
Bye. Thank you, Jerome. Bye.
Thank you for coming. Goodbye, everyone. Have a nice Friday afternoon.